Back now with Calvin Coolidge biographers, David Petrusa and also Amity Schlaze. I noticed that David is wearing his Calvin Coolidge shoes. Where do you get a pair like that?
I think around 43rd Street, actually,
Really?
yeah.
And also, Amity is actually wearing Calvin Coolidge boots. These are his actual boots, right?
These are courtesy of the Forbes Library in Northampton, Massachusetts, a wonderful library which has a museum of Coolidge's things.
Okay. And I'm, of course, wearing my shoes that nobody else has worn, nor will they wear. And this is actually his hat, too, isn't it?
Courtesy of the Forbes Library.
Look at that. It says Calvin Coolidge on it. I've been freaking out the whole time because I don't want to spill anything on it. I'd be like, yeah, and that stain was when we brought it out of the museum. All right, let me go to Chris in the audience, because I think you have the logical question, Chris.
Yes. A lot of people believe that Calvin Coolidge would have been responsible for the Great Depression. What are your thoughts on that? What do you believe, that he brought it around, or?
No, you're saying that because of the overheating, right, and no regulation or very little regulation?
Right.
A number of points. One, depressions were cyclical, continue to be cyclical. They came about every 10 years or so. And the question was not whether they would come or not, but what do you do to get out of them? And in 1920, Harding gets us out, Coolidge gets us out. And 1930, we don't get out because of Herbert Hoover. I've read some interesting studies lately about Hoover talking about harping on speculation, which fueled the sales off in 1929. Whether it's a depression or not, or a Great Depression, whether it would have come back, unemployment had receded to 6% in June of 1930. Then they raised the tariffs, the Smoot-Hawley. Coolidge was opposed to that. They said, well, we can adjust it later. He said, that's the worst thing you can do. Creating uncertainty in the economy is the worst thing you can do. Don't do it.
Which is what we're doing now. The
reason
why people are not spending their money is because, does anybody here in the audience think we're past the worst of it? Yeah, okay. If you're running a business, are you thinking now's a great time to expand? No. Why? Because you know that, A, we're not past the worst of it, and why aren't we past the worst of it? Because you're not sure what the government is going to do next. Right. And so they could change all the rules on us.
And one of the things that we used to mock was the phrase normalcy, which is a Harding phrase. He wanted, what was that? That was so boring. But now we have a new appreciation of it. He said, I don't want too much change so that we can recover from the wartime first and then the recession that they had. And Coolidge, too, believed in steadying the boat, continuity. He didn't fire the entire cabinet of Harding, even though Harding had been mired in scandal. He wanted, insofar as possible, to have continuity and little change so the economy could recover.
There's also a question of, is the federal government responsible for the stock market? Is it responsible? And some people that say that's the state of New York, and that's Franklin Roosevelt.
Okay. Here's what I think America, I didn't understand 2-3 years ago. When David said that depressions were cyclical, they were. It's the creative process. It comes up, it crashes, and it comes up, and it crashes, and it comes up, and it crashes. And we were having them about every 10 years. And we had them for every 10 years all the way along. As the economy started to grow, and as we were becoming more and more interdependent, it would happen because people would invent something new, and it would totally transform everything, and it would crash. That's why the Fed was introduced. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, because the argument to the American people, how they got it passed, was they said, you know, all these depressions, they got to end. And we'll be able to control it. We'll be able to make sure that the economy doesn't overheat, it doesn't get out of control, et cetera, so you won't have these crashes anymore. Well, we've had them about every 10 years. I contend that we've made things worse by having the controls set in. All right, back in a minute. All right, we're talking about Calvin Coolidge, and there's a reason for it. The guy changed America. At the end of a progressive era with Woodrow Wilson, Harding and Coolidge and Mellon changed America dramatically. Is it Elizabeth? Elizabeth, you had a question.
I was just wondering why they don't spend more time covering him in history class here.
Let me ask the historians. David?
The New Deal historians really dominated the market for probably half a century. Us conservatives are catching up now. But they had to not only build up FDR, they had to denigrate Calvin Coolidge. And I think that's a big part of it.
Amity?
I think, you know, they didn't really pay attention to the economics of the 20s in order to make the New Deal look more necessary, as David is saying. If the 20s were all right, then the New Deal wasn't as necessary as alleged. That's the problem.
You know, Amity, I have to tell you, your book, The Forgotten Man, and David, 1920, I mean, opened my eyes to a lot of things that it just seems like, I mean, I am, as you know, in fact, I think, Amity, I haven't seen you since you wrote this. You defended me in an article at one point, and I thank you for that. As you know, historians, they've demonized you guys, and they demonize me. And what in that article that you wrote, why did you say that they do that?
Well, the Academy is a guild. They're a club, the teachers, and they're a nice club, and they teach well, but they don't want new entrants. That's what a guild or a monopoly or a cartel is. So when someone comes from outside and says, I challenge you, and say, well, maybe here's another answer, here's another program, they tend to bristle. So that's setting aside right and left. And for too long, we've had one franchise, one guild, professors with tenure from universities, and lots of people can write history. Journalists can write history, radio hosts can write history. We can all learn history in a lot of different ways. I'm working very hard now making a cartoon book of The Forgotten Man and a cartoon Coolidge to go along with the serious volume of Coolidge, because people like graphic novels too, and people who don't read 400 pages still learn. So we have to open it up a bit. That's why they
David, do you think this is changing, that history, because you just said
Absolutely.
Conservatives are taking it back.
I think there are people popping up all over. Amity, Burton Folsom, Larry Schweikert. They're coming out, and there's a market for it. You've helped create that market a great deal. You know, we owe you so much, but it's a spontaneous outburst of conservative history and a hunger for it, because people know they haven't gotten the truth.
Yeah, look, America, I mean, David, you just said you owe me. No, you don't. Here's the thing. I went looking for the truth, and I started with you. And I started looking for the truth because nothing made sense to me. Nothing made sense. I was like, how did we get here? How did we get to a place to where we hate our founding fathers and Constitution doesn't matter and everything else? How did we get from there to here? When you start reading history, and not the history that they've been jamming down our kids' throats for so long, when you start to look at alternative history and the history that they say, oh, no, that's crazy, don't read that, and you read it, now all of a sudden things make sense. Now you say, oh, wait a minute. They say that's not true, but if I just put that one piece into history, all of a sudden, where we are is beginning to make sense. I can see how we got there. So I personally think that the American people know it in their gut. They know. They know something's not right. We haven't been taught the truth, and they're seeking it. Continue to do so, America, because you are the keeper of American history. It is on your shoulders. Back in a minute. If you think this show has been controversial before, the next couple of weeks are going to be a wild ride, and I invite you to join me. Next week we're doing, is it 2 or 3 episodes? I don't know if we've gotten it down to just 2 episodes, called America Revealed. It is the good, bad, and the ugly on the civil rights movement, truth that you've never heard before. Watch it. It's an important series. And then the week after that, I'll be down in Washington the whole week, getting ready for the event at the Lincoln Memorial on the anniversary that Martin Luther King had a dream. 8/28, that's a Saturday morning, August 28th, 10 a.m., Washington, D.C. We'll see you there. From New York, good night, America.